Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. So a little bit of background about me. My background is in public policy and nonprofits, and in the mid-90s was very interested in education and technology in graduate school, and was asking and looking at technology in other industries. And I kept coming up against the same question over and over again as I looked in other industries and looked at the role of technology. And technology is a productivity tool. It is ultimately in an industry, it drives prices down, improves quality, and productivity improves in that industry. Yet in higher education, we make massive investments in technology in both higher ed and K-12, and the exact opposite has happened. Prices have gone up, quality has arguably gone down. So what is it about higher education that makes technology investments not follow the same curve as they do in other industries? And as I thought more and more about this, the answer to me seemed largely regulatory, which I'll talk about more in a second. So coming out of grad school, I had the good fortune of coming out in the late 90s and started an online tutoring company called Smart Thinking, which sold tutoring services to colleges. We survived the internet meltdown, which came shortly thereafter and grew. And StraighterLine started as a division of Smart Thinking in 2008. And it became its own company in 2009, and then has grown until where we are today. And StraighterLine started under two principles, and perhaps self-indulgently, we think of ourselves kind of as the first MOOC, but unlike the other MOOCs, we have created a pathway to credit, for which we charge. And when you start charging, you lose the M for massive and the O for online, and you just become an OC. So you are an online course provider, which is exactly what we are. So StraighterLine offers about currently 40 general education courses, the exact commodity courses that we were talking about earlier today, Econ 101, Accounting 101, College Algebra, English Comp. We have 20 more coming out shortly. We charge $99 a month, and then a one-time fee of now $49 per course started. So it's a lot like a health club membership where you pay your fee, and then you can buy your Pilates class, your spin class, or whatever it is extra. By charging this manner, this does a few things. One is our prices are very low. Second is by charging on a subscription basis, students are not paying if they're not actually going to take the course or succeed in the course. So it's a much lower risk proposition, particularly for adult students and others. And as we know, failure rates or dropout rates are extremely high for adult students and community college students, and this is a much lower risk way to start college. We're not allowed to be a college, to be a college, you must offer entire degrees. Instead, we offer 40 courses, so we can't offer credit per se. What we did is we went to a number of colleges and said, if our courses look like the courses you are already awarding credit for in transfer, will you do the same for ours? And so a few brave colleges said, sure, that makes sense. That few brave colleges has now grown to about 35. And what that is simply an articulation agreement or an equivalency agreement. So it's entirely free. And the colleges that are around here, well, first we have a great relationship with Western Governors. We also have a great relationship with Kaplan, UMUC and Nova, and then a small for-profit in the DC area called Potomac are all colleges with whom we have formal articulation agreements, or I should say equivalency agreements. In addition to those, there are at least maybe 400 colleges where our students have told us have taken our credits. And that may be through the ACE credit recommendation service. All our courses are ACE recommended. Or it could be that a student is simply asking for credit. So one of the questions we often get is, well, how can you be so affordable? What are you doing? What corners are you cutting that allows you to be so much more affordable than a college? And the answer I get is we're not cutting any corners. We're just pricing it closer to the margins. And if you think about how much it costs for a college to deliver a general education course and direct instructional costs, it's typically $100 or less. And so you can do this back-of-the-envelope math, about $3,000 for an adjunct. That adjunct teaches 30 students. That's about $100. Everything else is overhead. For that $100 course, a college gets between $1,000 and $3,000 when you add in state support, tuition, and fees. So for face-to-face courses, arguably that's okay because students are getting the benefit of all that face-to-face infrastructure that this really large profit margin is paying for. But for online students, they're not getting any of the benefit of that infrastructure. Yet colleges price online courses as if they were face-to-face courses. So 93% of colleges price online courses the same or higher than face-to-face courses. So as a person with a policy interest and as an entrepreneur, I looked at that and said, hey, well, why doesn't somebody come in any other industry, somebody would come in and start to drive that price down? So someone would say, hey, here's a 10 to 30x margin. Why don't I come in and start to drive that price down? And the answer is it's very difficult to do because of our accreditation and regulatory structure. There are enormous subsidies that flow to colleges, both direct that we are aware of, like state support and financial aid for students, plus indirect, like nonprofit tax status, like tax credits, like tax-preferred savings plans. But to access any of those, you must go to an accredited college. To be accredited, you must offer an entire degree. You have complete authority to award or not award credit for somebody else's courses. The accreditation system is staffed and financed by colleges themselves. And the evaluation items are mostly input-based as opposed to output-based. So the cost structures must look more or less the same. So to put a finer point on it, if I have the generally acknowledged world's best calculus course, as a student, I can't get any taxpayer subsidies to take that course. And if I do take that course anyway, I then have to convince the college where I am going to award credit for it. And the college has a disincentive to do so. The college wants a student to take their course at their prices, because that's how their business model gets supported. So what StraighterLine did is simply price closer to the margins and create a pathway to credit. Now, we are a for-profit company. We're venture capital backed. So when I went to venture capitalists to raise money for this idea, I had to convince them that this was possible, that colleges would be willing to do this, and which wasn't an easy sell. And so what we did is said, hey, look, this is a structure that is keeping price competition out. And someone would say, well, that's an enormous structure, enormous amount of vested interest in maintaining that structure. And the response is that the world, I think, has finally gotten to a point where the economics are so dysfunctional that you're seeing this fragmentation outside of the traditional higher accreditation structure. So for two reasons. One is prices continue to rise. They're going to continue to rise even despite all the lofty rhetoric around bringing prices down. Second is that student support are diminishing. So where prices rise and student support is falling, students are willing to look at alternative models outside of the traditional accreditation structure. And then second, colleges are in an increasingly competitive environment. So it used to be colleges had essentially a small catchment area, and they had the power to tell students what they had to take. Now, in the online, it's a global marketplace. Colleges are competing with each other for students. They no longer quite have the power to say, you must take my course, because that student will go somewhere else. So those are forcing the changes in the market. It's forcing the growth of folks like us. We were very controversial between about 2008 and really spring of this year. And then the growth of the MOOCs, the advent of the MOOCs, the blessing by the elite colleges suddenly made us look less radical and more prescient. So lastly, just a few things that are coming for us. I think we continue to push the envelope. We're going from 40 to 60 courses. We are going to be adding effectively an eBay for professors starting in December. So professors will be able to come onto our course and augment our courses. They cannot subtract from them, but they can add to them and set their own price points. So they'll be able to set their own prices, augment our courses with a pathway to credit. We're going to distribute tests from ETS, CAE, which makes the collegiate learning assessment, so a student can take critical thinking skills tests, information literacy tests, get a score that complements the grades they're getting from us. We're going to have multiple content sets that students can buy to the same endpoint. So if you want college algebra, say, do you want McGraw-Hill content, Saylor Foundation, another publisher, we'll price it as we license it from the publisher, so the benefits of open courseware can really get driven through to the student. And then lastly, we've been working with corporations for the last year, getting them to agree to encourage their employees to start college with us and then go to one of our partner colleges. Because by going outside of the accreditation structure, but with a pathway to it, corporations can save a tremendous amount of money in tuition reimbursement programs. And they obviously see the benefits of that. So with that, I'll stop and pass it over to the next person.